Hey, Miss Margaret, thank you for hopping on the podcast show. Um, so why don't you tell my audience about how you got involved with Deltec and how you went from working with the law degree into banking?
Sure. When I graduated from law school back in 1997, I was involved immediately in the first real big tech revolution that of Web 1.0, working on IPOs. And when you do that, you get to know a lot of companies, like their business. You're describing their businesses. It was a really exciting time to be a young lawyer. And, from like 1997 to 2001, that's what I did. I worked outside the country. I worked in Tokyo, London, and Frankfurt. So a lot of um, real interesting things happening. And so fast forward, I've continued to do global work. A lot of it is involving finance. So worked with banks over the years. So raising money for companies, M&A, licensing. And as you get older and you've been doing this a while, so 25 years in, you start to do a lot of strategic advice for companies. Back in 2015, I had a client I was working with. They were a clinical research organization. And those are the companies that do the drug trials for big pharma, little pharma, big pharma. This was a company I worked with for a while. And I often would be asked, come on in, we're looking at something different and new, and join us. So brought in to look at kind of the risk, but also think through the strategy of how do we do this as well. And there was a blockchain technology company that was presenting to them, and it was about using a data blockchain in clinical trials to track the drug disbursements, the results. And I was, okay, this technology is really interesting, what it could do. And also at the time I had done a lot of work with AI, big data, and all kinds of different technologies. And this was sort of the missing piece that suddenly popped in. I said, we're going to have another tech revolution. There's going to be, and now comes past Web 3.0. When you bring all of this together, the Internet of Things, also where telecom was going, because telecom is an important part of this, and the advancement in telecom. So that was 2015. So I started working with a lot of operating companies that were looking at blockchain technology. Some startups just pure trying to figure out what to do with it. Some companies trying to integrate blockchain technology into what their existing operating company.
Mhm.
And the problem a lot of them were having was banks. And anytime something is new, or what I call, especially technology that's fringe technology. So that means the start of technology is always fringe. So people question it. They need to understand it deeply before they adopt it. How does it work? So this was the very, very fringe beginnings of blockchain coming out into, it had been around for a bit, but it really coming out into the rest of the world.
Mhm.
Um, we couldn't find banks. Couldn't find banks that would bank these new startup companies that were forming if they had anything to do with blockchain. Now, flashback to 1997, the same thing happened with internet companies. Silicon Valley Bank arose during that time and became so successful because it recognized that, and it embraced those innovators and trailblazers. But very similar, for me, it was like, okay, this is just a weird flashback. The same thing's happening.
Exactly.
Um, I had someone I had worked with had moved over to Deltec Bank and Trust and was working there, and I was talking to him about this issue, and it just turned out, and this was around 2000, end of 2016, beginning of 2017, 18. He said, well, it's really interesting because we're looking into this new technology. So, and Deltec is a private bank, which is
Mhm.
different than a retail bank. A retail bank, like your Bank of America, or your local community bank that you go to and you have your checking account. A private bank focuses on creating really kind of bespoke packages for customers, so that with corporates, you're looking at what can we do. This corporate's trying to do something, maybe they're trying not to do something that's the regular thing, and let's customize it. Let's create what they need. In addition, and that's on the kind of the commercial side. In addition, private banks also focus on high net worth individuals who are looking to have their help with their money management, but they're also looking for what's the new asset classes that are arising. They want to be involved in traditional, but they also want to dip their toes into higher risk areas. And so Deltec Bank had a combination of that at the time. So I started steering clients that I was working with towards Deltec Bank. And Deltec Bank started growing. I started representing them as their outside legal counsel in 2017, and worked with them on another number of things, closely with them, but watched them grow as they created Delchain, which was really one of the first OTC custodians of digital assets for people, and it's another entity of them. As they created Realm, which was the insurance company that is like the first insurance company to insure crypto. Most insurance companies won't yet, because they follow something called an actuarial approach, which is you wait till there's historic numbers to look at, and then you can figure out like predictability of claims. So Realm actually takes a deep diligence approach, which you have to do with emerging markets. So that was created. So this platform for me was so interesting, because it's not just with digital assets, it's everything that they do. They do it in life sciences. We're doing a lot with carbon credit right now. They look at emerging markets and say, okay, what can we be doing to support? And these emerging markets, are there new asset classes? Like carbon credits is another new asset class. Digital assets, Goldman Sachs last summer called it officially a new asset class. First time in like 30 years, I believe. I'm probably way off on that. There's a report on it, but I remember like, wow, I can't remember ever hearing this. So that's a long-winded answer. Hope that
the world
gets you what you're asking.
The world is definitely catching on to the potential with blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies, and just how blockchains basically getting themselves into healthcare, for an example, and digital ID, and then so many other things that I can't think of right now, but just exciting time to see and where it's going to go from 10 years from now.
I think you have exactly the right outlook on that. Watching how technology moves and is adopted, I have this theory called fringe, frontier, familiar, right? Technology starts on the fringe with developers, with people who are saying, what can I do here? But the rest of the population says, I don't know. Like when cloud computing and SaaS first came out, and I was writing, finance private placement memorandums for companies, right, and trying to describe this, and working with them on trying to raise money. The investors, the people, they had to understand it so deeply, because we're going to put our data up in this cloud. What does that mean? So you had to explain the technology, how it works. Now, fast forward, we all accept it, right? It's familiar. We don't question how it works. If you walked up to 10 people, maybe, and none of them are developers, maybe one of them could actually explain you the basics of it. But if you go back to 2001, 2, everybody had to know. That's how fringe technology is, because we, as human beings, our mind says, I really need to understand that, right? Does everyone know how a car works? Really?
Not really.
That's 10 people. Yeah, exactly. So, but at the time it first came out, if you look back, it's really interesting to watch the adoption of technology. So it becomes familiar. We're at the beginning of the familiar stage, right? And you tend to see then in the familiar stages when you see the bigger players come in, and finance comes in typically first. That's why you saw the DeFi wave happening, and they're exploring it. And obviously lots of focus on how can we make money with this? How can we make finance more interesting? And we're in that familiar stage, but still people want to understand that technology before, if you've got 10 people, how many of them do you think actually own any digital assets? If you grab 10 random people, I don't know if there's a survey on that, Sunny, if you're aware of anything.
I don't think so. And you know what? I always go to the store and I ask, are you guys accepting Bitcoin yet? And I always shake my head when they say no. I'm just like, all right, but you will. Mark my words, you will.
Well, yeah, but if you go to Singapore or Tokyo, where you tend, countries where you tend to see technology adoption a little earlier, I actually did this test. This was in 2019. I went to Tokyo and I was like, can I spend the entire time there once I land, because planes weren't taking it yet, just on Bitcoin? And I could. And this was 2019. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't too hard. It wasn't too hard to find the hotels, places to eat, etc. So we're in that, but we're still in that familiar, the frontier stage. We're not yet in the familiar stage. We're in fringe frontier. I think I said that wrong. Frontier and familiar. And we'll get to, in 10 years, that familiar, where this is all commonplace. Nobody knows how Netflix streams to us. Nobody knows how that cloud works to get it down to us. In 10 years, that'll be blockchain technology that's doing it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be faster and more latent. You can go to the mountains and you'll have your Netflix.
Absolutely. And plus the reason, like, I wasn't really technologically inclined when it came to like working with this kind of stuff, and blockchain kind of brought my curiosity a bit and helped me explore and go down deep rabbit holes, just wanting to.
What was it about blockchain that really grabbed your curiosity?
So there's this kid, he's an adult now, but back in 2017, I saw this TEDx talk, and his name is Eric Finman, and you might have heard of him. And so he ended up dropping out of high school after making $100,000 in the Bitcoin. I was like, and I'm thinking, I'm in my early 20s. I'm just thinking, like, what am I doing with my life? And so I listened to Gary Vee, and Gary Vee was giving some advice about podcasters and what topics they should do when they start a podcast. And he's like, why don't you start talking about Bitcoin? It's a relatively new market. And I was like, you know what? That's a really good idea. And so ever since then, 2017, started a podcast, YouTube channel. And I still don't know everything that there is to blockchain and cryptocurrency. There's just so much to learn. And it's just so hard to keep up with the evolving technology.
Well, when I come to Florida, I will sit with you and I'll do my red solo cup demonstration of how Bitcoin from a technology perspective works, which is something I did at a party in like 2016, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's so straightforward. That makes sense." And so, and maybe because we were drinking as well, but and the red solo cups were involved.
All right, make sure it's Dom Perignon when you come.
Dom Perignon?
Dom
I don't know.
Perignon.
I'm more a Patron tequila girl.
Okay. Okay.
I'll get you some Dom.
It sounds good. So what challenges has Deltec faced with correspondent banks, like with sound risk? It sounds like risk, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the great thing about Deltec Bank, it's been around for close to or over 75 years. I always get the number slightly off. And so it is highly regulated. We've got a banking regulator. We also have a securities regulator because we have securities licenses. And we have a full-on risk management function, a full-on compliance function, a full-on legal function. So, you have 3 eyes, right? If you think about it, that are.
Please go. Oh my goodness, don't do this to
me. I know how banks work. In 2008, I did the first TARP bailout. Actually, the very first one was a community bank in North Carolina that I helped out with that. So I'm intimately aware of how banks are regulated and manage risk. and also how regulators work in the U.S., the Federal Reserve, or if you're a state chartered bank, the state banks. What I was surprised in learning that when I started working with Deltec in 2017 is actually I had a bias against banks that were in the Caribbean, offshore banks, right? That offshore, tax haven. Well, that's not what it's like at all. First of all, Bahamas is not a tax haven, so it's not a tax benefit, to as an individual to try to shelter money here. But the banking regulator here is, I would say, more on top of things because they have to fight against that perception. So they are more engaged. They're with the banks that are here. They are constantly, if a slight negative media report comes out about any bank, they are calling you that in it within a minute. Because and they work with you and they talk with you about the risk and they require a lot. So the banking, what I would say is I have found the Bahamas to be one of the strictest areas for banking regulation overall. And I don't call it offshore. I call it, this is not me, but one of my chief commercial officer said this once, we're moving towards a no-shore banking regime. Where banking is not going to be situated when you say it's a US bank, it's this. Banks actually have to be no shore. They have to be able to operate globally.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how is this bank used for innovators? What steps should they take? Help us understand, like, people that are involved with business and getting involved with banks
Sure.
with cryptocurrencies.
Sure. So in terms of we really focus on helping businesses understand if you're in a disruptive industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I use disruptive not in a negative way. We're not like trying to shake things up just to shake things up. I'm thinking of disruptive like how Amazon first disrupted, bookstores, and then created the concept of e-commerce and fulfillment. When you look at Netflix and how, for me, I remember when my TV went to cable TV. So I'm showing my age, Sunny, a little bit, but so for me, going from like 5 channels to cable TV was huge. Well, I just read a report yesterday that live streaming, like Netflix, Hulu, etc., has overtaken cable TV. And so you see these disruptions happen. We like to work with folks who are thinking that way. And what we also do is we like to work with them in a way where we're just not your financial services company, right? We have people who understand the industry really well that you might be in. Could be life sciences, could be nanotech, could be carbon credits, or could be blockchain and crypto. And so, and then we come towards it with a mentality of helping them understand you have to be agile in business, especially in blockchain. When I say agile, what does that mean to you, Sunny? What do you think of when I say agile? Somebody needs agility, a business needs agility.
Coachable.
Mm-hmm. Coachable. That's a huge part of it. It also means, to me, we always say you have to have the ability to think and understand things quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in business, and you said it earlier, there's so much to learn in blockchain, right? There's so much to inhale, to understand. So you have to have an ability to have that curiosity and desire to understand a tremendous amount and think and understand quickly, because every week the industry is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Every week there's something that is slightly changing, something new happening. But it's not just that. A business, you've probably seen this. You have people who can think really quickly and know what's coming. I have what I call my crypto ball, where I try to figure out what's coming next, right? Which industry is going to be hit next by this. And I post a lot about this on Twitter. You got to think and understand quickly, but with technology, and this is so much with blockchain, you have to be able to move quickly and easily. You have to understand that you have to plan. It's really important to plan. It's really important if you're doing new initiatives, new businesses, to make sure you understand what you're doing. But first mover is so important. Moving quickly is so important. I'll give you an example of this. There's a company that I love. They're called Infrared, and they're the technology. They're the major technology supplier behind content streaming, making it latent. That's why I was talking about it earlier, because I've learned a lot from them. So one time, so it is founded by Chris and Rebecca Allen. They're married, and they told me they were going out for Cape Cod for the weekend. I said, "Oh, that's great. You're going to get a little break." And she goes, "There is no vacation for startups."
Constantly
And
working.
that's the other. And I tell a lot of companies this all the time. If you're looking to get rich quick, etc., go be what we used to call a day trader, which in crypto is now a full, it's 24/7. If you do that, if you're looking to do that, okay. If you're looking to start a company, and using blockchain technology, you have to know that there are no vacations for startups. It's great that Chris and Rebecca working together with their company. It's actually worked out really well because they both have that mentality. But it's not necessarily the easiest thing for having a family life or other things, because forming a business of any kind, startup to emerging growth to mid-size, etc., requires a tremendous amount of dedication. So we talk to companies a lot about that. How can you be agile in this blockchain environment? Is something we discuss kind of around the virtual water cooler a lot.
Okay. And what does quantum have to do with banking, though?
Well, what is quantum? Everything has to banking. So you could be using the word banking, and I'm going to challenge that word. All right. Everybody needs a financial service advisor. Every company, every industry needs it. You need financing. Once you get money, you need to know how to manage that money, right? A treasury function. So banking, in my mind, when you say banking, it's I'm putting my money in an account, and maybe it'll get 2 or 3%, but I'm not really having a relationship much with that banker. I think that I look at what the future of banking or financial services should be. Like, what should it be? In the demographics of millennials and below, where there's a craving for community. So quantum is an industry, right? That's yet another industry where there's a lot of great technology coming in to use. So for
Aren't
those
they
folks,
merging together though, in a way?
Yes. And maybe they'll be merged together. I don't, just that we can spend another 3 hours just on that topic alone. But here, like, I think what I find interesting is where will what you call banking be in 10 years? Because we see these things like Robinhood and Coinbase and all of that, but think about what I call my dad's bank, which you would probably call your granddad's bank. My dad we had a family-owned business. He owned a deli connected to our house. Every Saturday, I would go with my dad to the bank. He'd have that bag of cash, really, in coins, and we would deposit that. And you sit down with the banker. My dad would dress up. I would wear a dress. There was a certain almost paternalistic, authoritarian approach to the bank, right, at the time. And my dad trusted that the bankers were going to look out for him. They helped him get SBA loans. They gave him advice on his business, right? Well, fast forward 2008, meltdown. The millennial generation, which was in college at that time, watched their parents lose their houses, lose their jobs, right?
My parents fell victim to that.
Yes, so you know what I'm talking about. So now, what's your relationship? What do you think of banks? They're traditional banks. Do you trust those banks? And so so that's why I think we are seeing a lot of disruption and decentralization move towards the financial systems, because maybe you don't trust them. But I do think it's not really you don't trust. I think what we have to look at is trust differently. What you have to do is social community is so important for millennials and below. Look at Collabland, which is out there, focused completely on social community, which is another great startup, to not even a startup anymore. They're wildly successful. Interaction. We see metaverse. There's a desire to interact and trusting online with people. So I think fast forward 10 years, are people going to have Robinhood, or what? Are they going to have 17 different things? Are they going to go to one platform? If we could create a space that creates a trusting relationship that works for what the demographics of these generations desire, and we have to understand that's going to be the game changer. And that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about, because I do want there to be a place where people can trust again the financial system.
You're almost kind of making it sound like fun and mixing it with the game in a kind of way.
Well, what do you think of that? Like, I often wonder that, and I mean, you don't want your banker to play with you. Banker, I use that word, but you don't want your banker to play with you, right? Because you want to feel like a certain kind of like seriousness from your banker. But on the other hand, you want them to understand you. And I think it's more that, like, that's what we spend a lot of time on, when we're talking with like carbon credit companies that we're working with, really understanding what's driving them, what's their interest, and then communicating with them in the way they want. Does that mean I'm getting on the phone and talking to them all the time? Or does that mean when they text me at 2 a.m, or, WhatsApp me, or Telegram me, or Discord me, or, whatever it is, that I am on all those platforms and I'm responsive. So it's thinking about that sort of thing.
Right. Now we're coming to a close here. I know
Yes.
you're busy dealing with some blockchain and have very important meetings. So last question. Any last words that excite you about cryptocurrency before we come to a close?
Well, I'll go back to blockchain, because cryptocurrency is just something that's run on blockchain. Mm-hmm. The way you said earlier, something about like you're interested in like where it's going with healthcare, etc. As technology moves from fringe to frontier to familiar, and things develop around that technology, not just blockchain, but other developments happen, you're able to see it will go into all these other industries, and it's going to, we're in the midst of a technology revolution. This is what I would say to everyone out there who, look around. We are in the midst of major changes happening, and 10, 15 years from now, you'll look back, like I look back at 97 to 2005 or so, and say, I cannot believe all the differences in how the world operates. I do think blockchain technology will break down borders. I do think we will have a global currency. I think this will lead to, it will be, what I find exciting about blockchain technology is I think it will be what leads to the end of a lot of things we'd love to see end in the world: terrorism, sex trafficking,
world peace.
This technology, world peace. That's what because a global digital currency, which is not too hard to think about when you think about, not too long ago we were trading using silver and gold, and before that stones. Okay, in our history, fiat isn't that old. It's not too difficult to think about that. And I don't think it will. Here's my crystal ball. I hope in my lifetime I get to see a global currency that is not necessarily government backed.
Okay, and we're coming close.
Okay.
Well, I thank you so much for coming on the show, and keep doing what you're doing. And I hope to see you in the future.
I can't wait to meet up with you in person, and I think we can talk for hours.
I hope so too. All right. Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.